Everyone. Many people have a confusion about whether they should go or move to the Middle East for a job or try and move to a place like UK. Being a person who grew up in UAE and lived there for most of my life and now presently in the UK, I'd like to take a few minutes to just compare some basic differences between both the countries and hoping to give an insight into how both countries are and how it compares. But I cannot tell you that this country is better than the other. It would be based on your interests and what your priorities are, that each country would be more interesting to you. So I've just got 8 side headings here under which I'm going to just give you brief explanations of how both countries are different from each other. Um, Basic thing would be, or the first thing would be, living situation. Um, so in UAE, you are always renting out. You can rent a place. You live there. No matter how many ever years you live in that particular country, you still always are able only to rent a house. Whereas in the UK, initially obviously we're all renting out, and when we come into the country, but you have the opportunity to put some money in and buy your own house. It doesn't have to be that you are a permanent resident or a citizen of UK, but you can still apply and buy a house even if you are not a permanent citizen. Comparing the rents, when you're living as a rented person, it's basically the same, I would say. Most of the places, like for example, if you're living in UAE, if you take an average rent, it would be most of the time same in most of the places here in the UK. But if you go to proper cities like London or big cities, rent will be definitely much more higher. But obviously the lifestyle and everything else is different in those places as well. Um, in UAE, when you're paying rent, in addition to that, you give your utility bills, which is your water and electricity. Here in the UK as well, when you're renting, you have to give your utility bills, your gas or electric or whatever. But addition to that, you have to give also council tax. So the council tax is where you pay a fixed amount to the council that you're living in, and they use that money to basically maintain your council areas and things like that. So that's an extra from what you pay out of, other than the rent and the utility bills. So that's basically the thing. But the most beneficial thing is, like I said, you can always buy a house here in the UK and settle down and say, okay, this is my own house. I'm not renting it anymore. Obviously, you pay the mortgage, but at the end of the time of your mortgage, the house is yours. Coming to food, which is the most essential thing that we all have. Um, UAE is a very good place where you can get all the local produce that you want, especially from India. So I'm from India, and all those food that you crave, that you want from your local areas, you're able to get in UAE. You've got lots of restaurants, and almost all the supermarkets provide you with all the local produce where you can easily come home and buy and cook whatever you like. It's a bit different in the UK. You still have access to a lot of the items, although not everything. And it depends on the place that you live in as well. Some places have a lot of Indian stores, or they have a lot of Indian produce that is available more easily than other places. In some of the places, you have maybe one Indian store or one Asian store where you can go to get some of the items, but most of them might be frozen. You have a lot of frozen fruits and vegetables coming from different places being stored here. So it mostly might be frozen. Plus, because it's coming a long way from a different country, it's kind of like an exotic food and things like that. So it tends to be a bit more expensive than what you would expect to get in UAE or back home. Um, and obviously there are a few lesser choices as well, because you're not able to get each and everything that you always want or get in UAE. Next thing would be the climate. Obviously, UAE is a desert, and because of that, the climate is more or less all the time hot and humid, and it's always higher temperatures. Um, Coming to the UK, it would classify as more of a country that's cold or more wintry. A bit of rain scattered throughout. Even in summer, you might get a few days where it's nice and shiny and nice and warm climate, but nothing close to how the climate is high in UAE. So climate wise, it's a bit more wet and cold here in the UK. Another major factor is education. Um, in UAE, you have to pay for your school fees, and based on the school that you attend, the fees will be different. You've got lots and lots of good education and private schools and things like that, but obviously, you have to pay a huge amounts for the school education. Here in the UK, all the schools, all children go to school, and it's basically free education, unless you want to go to um, very expensive private schools, and you don't have uh, many private schools in the country. Most are government schools, and you still have good education, and all the education is still free. Um, Next would be hospital or the treatment facilities or clinics and sorts of things like that. So in UAE, you can go, if you're feeling unwell, you can just walk into a clinic and say you want to see the doctor, get an appointment with the doctor and see the doctor and get your medications. Obviously, you pay a consultation fee to the clinician there, and you buy the medicines from the pharmacy. Um, Also, if you have insurance coverage in the UAE, then you have to pay much lesser than what you normally would have to pay. Also, based on the insurance that you have, the amount you pay will be different, whether it's hospital charges or consultation charges and things like that. But here in the UK, any person who is a resident, it doesn't mean that you have to have a permanent residency or citizenship. If you are a person working and residing in the UK, your hospital charges are absolutely free. If you get admitted to the hospital, you don't have to pay a single penny for medication or treatment or doctor's charges or food or anything of that sort. Even if you want to go to a clinic and see a doctor, it's a bit different here. So based on the place that you are in, you've got GPs or general practitioner surgeries, what they call it, and you have to get yourself registered in that particular GP center. Once you're registered, when you want to see a doctor, you call up, you ask for an appointment, and you go and see the doctor. Again, there's no consultation charges, absolutely free. When it comes to buying medications that the GP has prescribed for you, um, it's the same cost for every single medicine. So whereas in UAE or in or back home in India, each medicine has its own different rate. That's different here. Every single medicine has the same exact cost. Plus, if you are on long-term medications, or if you need to, or if you fall under certain categories, certain specific medications that you need to take long term, you can apply for a medical exemption certificate or a pre-prescription certificate, which turns out that you don't have to pay for your tablets that you buy, or you pay a very minimum amount for the unlimited number of medications that you get to buy. So healthcare wise, it's pretty good here based on the cost. Sometimes it can be a little difficult to get appointments with the GP, or the hospitals can be quite busy as well, but all the more expense wise, it's much less here. The next thing I would like to compare is the job. Obviously, in the UAE, you've got good job opportunities, and the major benefit is that the salary that you get in the UK is tax free. So all the salary is exactly coming into your account. There's nothing reduced from your total salary that you get. You get the whole amount in your hand. But here in the UK, when you get your salary, you have a salary that comes, plus you get your, there's a few reductions, like you have to pay for national insurance, you have to pay the tax, and if you are in the pension scheme, then you pay for pension as well. So once all these reductions are done, then the remaining amount comes into your account as your final pay. um, but the benefit here is, there's a minimum wage that the government has set up. So no matter what job you do, you are paid a particular minimum amount, and it's per hour. So the more hours you do, the more you get paid. Whereas in UAE, you don't have a minimum pay. Whatever the company decides to pay, that's what they're going to give you. And even if you do an extra hour, you don't get paid for it. You've got a fixed salary. So monthly salary remains always the same. But here, it's like I said, it's hourly. So if you do a couple of hours extra, you get extra pay. So you don't have a fixed salary. Plus, all the jobs here are considered equal. There's no discrimination that your job is socially less approved or anything like that. Every job is considered equal. Every single person's job is respected as well. A very important factor that I want to consider next is ease of access to going back home or back to India. UAE, or the Middle East in general, being quite close to India, is very easy for us to get flights, or even if there's a quick emergency, you can just grab the next flight that you want, and it's a couple of hours journey, 4 or 5 hours maximum, and you just reach back home and you can see your loved ones, and you've got more flights, very less hassle-free journey and things like that. Whereas here in the UK, you're halfway across the world. You have long distance to travel, and obviously because people want to go on holidays, and they book long periods of vacation and things like that, it's a bit more expensive. The flights are expensive, your stays would be expensive, plus it's not always feasible to get a flight at the rate that you exactly want and things like that. So ease of access to get back home to see your family or other members would be a bit difficult when it comes to going from the UK. Especially now with COVID and everything going on, it's real trouble getting to anywhere actually at present. But even then, in general, it's at least a good 10 to 14 hours journey, even if you take a single flight out from the country to India. One more thing that I would like to consider is driving. So if you go to UAE, you need, no matter how much driving experience you've got in your own country, you still have to go through a minimum number of classes and apply for the test and clear the test before you can even drive a little bit on the roads in UAE. But here in the UK, if you come with an Indian driving license, for the first year of your stay in the country, you can drive any car. So you can buy a vehicle, you can still drive for the first year, and that gives you a particular time where you can apply for a UK driving license. And there is no minimum number of classes that you must attend to apply for the test. So if you think your driving is good enough, or you can go for a couple of classes with the driving instructors here, and if they think, okay, you're driving fine enough, you can just straight away apply for the driving test and take the test. But if you are a fresh driver coming to the UK, you've not driven a car before, obviously then you have to learn and apply for a test and get the license. And here in the UK, you drive on the right side, exactly like how you drive in India, but in the UAE, it's more on the left side driving. So these are some of the basic differences that I have seen and experienced. I know it's limited knowledge, but this is how I compare both the countries. If you ask me which country I like best, I cannot say that this country is better or UK is better or anything like that, because both countries, or any country in that matter, they have their own benefits, and each country has its own downsides as well. So there are a lot of things I miss about UAE, or about living in the UAE, but there are also a lot of things I love about being in the UK as well. So it's difficult to say that I love UAE better or I love UK better. And for each person, like I said in the beginning, it's your priorities that will say which country is better. But I'm hoping that these points would have given you at least a slight insight into how living in both countries are, and hopefully helps you to take a better decision. Thank you very much.